Elena Voss stood in the empty living room of her new house and let herself breathe for the first time in 3 years. The walls were bare, the floor still smelled of fresh paint. There was no furniture yet, no boxes even, just her and the quiet and the late afternoon light coming through the windows. She had never lived somewhere that felt entirely her own, and now she did. It had taken her 3 years to leave Marcus, 3 years of small cruelties that grew larger over time, of apologies that never turned into change, of a version of herself shrinking a little more with each passing month. She had told herself so many stories to stay. He is stressed, he loves me too much, it is my fault for pushing him. She had believed those stories because believing them was easier than facing what leaving would cost her. But one morning, 6 months ago, she had looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and not recognized the woman staring back, tired eyes. A flinch that had become permanent, like her body was always braced for something. That morning she packed a bag while Marcus was at work, and she never went back. Now she was here, in a small coastal town 3 hours from the city, in a house she had bought with money she had quietly saved for 2 years without him knowing. She had a job waiting for her at a bakery on Main Street. She had a fresh start, and she intended to hold on to it with both hands. The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday. Elena was in her front yard, wrestling with an unruly rosebush, when she heard the rumble of a large engine. She looked up to see a truck backing into the driveway of the house next door, the one that had sat empty since she moved in 3 weeks earlier. 2 men in dark jackets began unloading furniture, moving with the kind of quiet efficiency that suggested they had done this many times before. Then a car pulled up behind the truck, sleek and black, and a man stepped out. Elena's hands went still on the rosebush thorns. She knew that face. She had seen it only once, months ago, at a restaurant in the city, where Marcus had taken her to celebrate a deal he was proud of. The man had been seated at a corner table with 2 others, and the entire restaurant staff had treated him like visiting royalty. Marcus had leaned over and whispered his name with something close to awe, Dante Moretti. Everyone knows not to ask what he does for a living. And now he was standing in the driveway next to hers, rolling up his sleeves to help carry a bookshelf into the house. Elena ducked inside before he could see her. For the next week, she did everything she could to avoid him. She left for the bakery early and came home late. She kept her blinds drawn. She told herself it did not matter who her neighbor was, that she had nothing to do with whatever world he belonged to, and that the safest thing was simply to keep her head down and let her new life continue exactly as she had planned it. But small towns do not work that way, and neither, it turned out, did fences. It happened on a Saturday morning. Elena's fence, an old wooden thing that had clearly not been repaired in years, had finally given up and collapsed after a night of wind. She stood in her yard surveying the damage, wondering how much a repair would cost, and whether she could manage it herself with videos from the internet, when a voice spoke behind her. "That's a bad break. You'll want to replace the whole post, not just patch it." She turned to find Dante standing at the property line, hands in his pockets, looking at her fence with the calm assessment of someone who had built things before. "I can handle it," Elena said, more sharply than she meant to. "I don't doubt that." His voice was even, unbothered by her tone. "But I've got the tools already out from some work on my own place. Wouldn't take me an hour." Elena studied him. Up close, he did not look like what she had imagined. No dark suit, no sunglasses despite the sun, no entourage trailing behind him. Just a man in a plain gray shirt, sleeves pushed up, offering to fix a fence. "Why would you do that?" she asked. He shrugged. "Good neighbors help each other, that's all." She wanted to say no. Every instinct told her to keep her distance from a man whose name made restaurant staff nervous. But her fence was broken, her budget was tight, and something about the plainness of his offer made it hard to refuse. "Fine," she said, "but I'm paying you for the wood." A faint smile crossed his face, there and gone. "We'll argue about that later." He fixed the fence in just under an hour, exactly as he had promised, and left without asking for anything in return, without lingering, without trying to turn the favor into a conversation she did not want to have. Elena stood at her window afterward, watching him walk back to his own house, and felt something she had not expected. Not fear, curiosity. Over the following weeks, small moments accumulated. He noticed when her porch light burned out, and left a replacement bulb on her step with a short note. When her car would not start one cold morning, he appeared with jumper cables before she had even finished dialing for help, as though he had somehow known she needed him. He never explained how he always seemed to know. He never overstepped, never lingered too long, never made her feel like his help came with strings attached. Elena began to notice things about him that did not fit the rumors. The way he spoke gently to the elderly woman who ran the flower shop, always asking about her arthritis. The way he tipped generously but without show, never wanting anyone to make a fuss about it. The quiet, careful way he seemed to watch over the street at night, though she could never quite catch him doing anything specific, only sensed that somehow he was paying attention. Still, she kept her guard up. She had learned the hard way that charm and kindness could hide something else entirely, and she was not willing to make that mistake twice. Then Marcus found her. It happened on an ordinary Thursday evening. Elena was walking home from the bakery, going over the day's orders in her head, when she saw a familiar car parked across from her house. Her stomach dropped before her mind even caught up to why. Marcus stepped out of the car, and every old fear rushed back into her body at once, the flinch, the shrinking, the desperate urge to disappear. "Elena!" His voice was the same one she remembered, calm on the surface, but with an edge underneath that only she seemed to hear. "You didn't think you could just vanish, did you?" "You need to leave," she said, forcing steadiness into her voice even as her hands trembled. "We need to talk, that's all. You owe me that much." He took a step toward her, and Elena felt herself freeze, the same way she used to freeze in their old apartment, when his voice rose and she did not know which version of him she was about to face. "I don't owe you anything." "Elena," his tone sharpened. "Get in the car." A shadow fell across the sidewalk. Dante was there, seemingly from nowhere, standing between them without any urgency in his movement, as though he had simply been passing by, but his eyes, when they landed on Marcus, held none of the warmth Elena had grown used to seeing. "She said she doesn't owe you anything," Dante said quietly. "I'd listen to her." Marcus looked him over, sizing him up the way men like Marcus always did, searching for weakness. He did not find any. "This isn't your business." "It is now." Dante's voice never rose, but something in it made the air feel colder. "You're going to get back in your car, and you're not going to come back to this street. If you do, I'll make sure it's the last mistake you make in this town." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Whatever he saw in Dante's face was enough to change his mind. He got back into his car without another word and drove away, and this time, Elena knew somehow he would not return. She stood on the sidewalk, shaking, relief and confusion tangled together inside her. "How did you know?" she asked, once she could speak again. Dante was quiet for a moment. "I didn't just move in next door by chance, Elena." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then seemed to decide she deserved the truth. "I saw you once, at that restaurant, with him. I noticed how he spoke to you. How you flinched when he raised his hand for the waiter. I've seen men like that before. I know what they do to the people who love them." He paused. "When I heard you'd moved out here, I made some calls. Found out this house was for sale. I bought the one next to it." Elena stared at him, unsure whether to feel touched or unsettled. "You followed me." "I watched over you," he corrected gently. "There's a difference, even if I understand why it might not feel that way right now. I never meant to frighten you. I just couldn't stand the thought of you facing that man alone, not after what I saw. You don't even know me." "I'd like to," he said simply, "but only if you want that too. If you'd rather I sell the house and go, I will. I won't pretend I don't understand why you might want that." Elena looked at him for a long moment, this man who moved through the world with quiet danger and quiet kindness in equal measure, who had followed her out of concern rather than obsession, who had never once made her feel small or frightened the way Marcus had. She thought about the fence he fixed without being asked, the porch light left on her step, the careful distance he always kept until she was ready to close it herself. "I need to know who you really are," she said. "All of it, not just the parts that are easy to hear." "I can tell you that," Dante said, "but I won't pretend the answer is simple, or that it makes me a safe choice. My world isn't gentle, Elena. I've done things I'm not proud of, and I likely will again, because it's the world I was born into and never fully managed to leave. He met her eyes. What I can promise you is that I would never raise my voice at you, never make you feel small, never make you doubt whether you're safe in your own home. I know the difference between protecting someone and controlling them. He never did. Elena felt something in her chest loosen, just slightly, the way ice begins to crack before it breaks apart entirely. I need time, she said. Take as much as you need, Dante answered. I'm not going anywhere. Well. A small, wry smile touched his mouth. Not unless you ask me to. In the weeks that followed, Elena did not rush anything. She let herself sit with the truth of who Dante was, weighing it honestly, instead of running from it or romanticizing it. She talked to him on her porch some evenings, learning about his life, his regrets, the parts of himself he wished were different, and the parts he had made peace with. She set boundaries, clear ones, about what she needed to feel safe, and he respected every single one without complaint or resentment. Slowly, carefully, she let him in. It was not a perfect love story, not the kind found in fairy tales. It was something more complicated and more honest than that, built between two people who had both seen the darker sides of the world and chosen, despite everything, to be gentle with each other. One evening, months later, Elena sat on her porch steps as the sun sank low over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Dante sat beside her, close, but not crowding her, exactly as he always was. I used to think safety meant being alone, Elena said quietly, that the only way to protect myself was to never let anyone close again. And now, she looked at him, at the house beside hers, at the life she had built with her own two hands, and then, slowly, chosen to share. Now I think safety is about who you choose. Not being alone, just choosing carefully. Dante reached over and took her hand, and she let him. The two houses stood side by side in the fading light, hers and his, separate, but no longer entirely apart. She had come to this town to escape one life and build another, and somehow, in the last place she expected, she had found not just safety, but something that felt, for the first time in years, like home.